Hi, and welcome to the bi-weekly meeting in Project Koala. I don't see any real newcomers. Maybe Paul, have you been in these meetings before?
I think I joined the tail end of the last one.
Yeah. Why don't you introduce yourself for the audience then? All the millions of people that watch this on YouTube.
Oh dear. Well, my name is Paul. I currently am employed by Sonotype. I'm here partially representing Sonotype, but also, I guess, because I've been around CycloneDX for 2 or 3 years. I can't remember now, Steve. Um, and for me, even though in the commercial space, Sonotype has products that consider S-bombs and software supply chain stuff. For me, when we're out talking to folk, right, there is a big gap in people's understanding, both around the legislation that's driving all this kind of stuff, but also, I've got an S-bomb, great, now what, right? That's the next question people kind of ask. And I personally see this working group and this standard as the best current vehicle to try and clarify that. Basically, I can't put it simpler than that. So I'm yeah, super excited to be helping.
Very welcome. And what a start we had. Paul has contributed Open API spec, a new version of it, and has really filled my mailbox with stuff from GitLab the last couple of days. I'm really happy and grateful for all that work. We're moving forward. And Victor has confused everyone with a mega super pull request that wasn't that big. I've seen much worse, Victor. But since you apologized for the size, I just have to make a note of it.
It was hard to break it down.
Yeah, sometimes that happens. It pulls together. And Piotr has added a lot of open tickets and commented. So thank you, everyone. I love seeing this activity and seeing us moving forward. But let's start now with...
probably too much activity.
No,
it's filling my mailbox too.
Yeah, that's a good sign. So, Steve, do we have anything from ECMA TC54? I think we failed having a meeting recently.
Yeah, we need to get those scheduled. It looks like on the meeting notes you have it officially starting in January, so that's fine. I think we just need to get that on the calendar so that people actually know, and we will get the meeting invites set up as well. You can work.
You and I need a meeting with that guy from Lockheed Martin as well.
That is correct. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
But I was thinking more of the larger group, TC54. What happens in Perl and other areas?
Yeah, it's business as usual. We are currently, we've got a couple new features that need to be reviewed by TC54 for CycloneDX going into 1.7. We've got a number of initiatives all around documentation. We're starting with package URL. We will also capture the Koala documentation. We are using EC markup, which TC39 developed. Using EC markup, which is an extension of HTML essentially. It allows us to produce really, really good both online documentation as well as the actual PDFs, the ECMA PDFs that are then distributed on the ECMA website through a single build process. It's quite remarkable, actually, how much effort TC39 put into that. So we believe that we can reuse a lot of that work, and I'm still working on doing that, starting with package URL, but we're going to expand out to Koala and a bunch of other things as well.
Yeah.
Steve,
at some point we need to figure out how to encapsulate the open API spec and our other specs. But right now we need to write and collect the data and agree on things before we start reformatting. Sorry, Mark.
Steve, sorry to interrupt, Steve.
No, Victor.
In terms of that documentation, I bugged you the other day because I got a question about the date format in Cyclone, right? If one wanted to contribute and help clarify things in the docs, is there a Git repo where that is done, or how? What's the workflow for that within the framework?
For CycloneDX specifically, the XML, JSON, and protobuf schemas are an implementation of the standard. For CycloneDX specifically, the JSON version is the authoritative truth. From there, we actually generate the human documentation, which is in fact the standard. So if you want the standard clarified, we need to have a issue opened in GitHub in the specification repo, as well as a pull request clarifying that documentation for the JSON, the XML, and the protobuf schemas. And then once that's merged in, the automated documentation process that we have will then capture that, and it will now be included in the human readable standard.
So if I wanted to help with the 1.7 before that's cut, the time is now to get that in, I presume.
Yeah. I don't know when 1.7 will be released. It will be sometime next year.
Okay, so there's still time.
It's going to be a big release. We typically target Q1, Q2, but I think it's too big of a release for that. It'll probably be Q3, Q4 would be my guess.
And is the documentation locked in for a given release, or can there be clarification made to the release post-release, so to speak?
There are distinctions between an OWASP release and an ECMA release. Now, the ECMA release of CycloneDX 1.6 is technically a little bit different than the OWASP release of 1.6. Compatible, obviously, but slight changes in documentation. So we can do an OWASP release, and this is going to be true for Koala as well. We could release Koala, right? Once we get it done, there's no reason to kind of keep it back. Yet we can improve that documentation while we are preparing the ECMA docs, essentially.
Okay. All right, I might bug you with offline with some links afterwards then, but because I was curious about specifying the date stuff in particular.
Yep.
Okay. To go back to the topic here, as Steve and I said, we will start official ECMA workgroup meetings for Koala next quarter, right? But the community meetings where we do the work will continue as before. So we'll work on that in parallel, and we'll inform you more about the details. But we have a few ECMA members. We have a few invited guests that we will do. But the real fun work is over here. And I have to say, welcome to Dimitri. We've seen you before. I'm happy to have you back. I think I have a question for you in the backlog.
Hello, Oli.
And we have a new friend, Vandana. Did I pronounce that right?
Hi, everyone.
Welcome.
Thank
Hi.
you.
Do you want to say a few words about yourself, or?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am Vandana, and I'm currently based out of India. I've been associated with OWASP for over 10 years. And currently, I'm part of a few projects and leading a chapter in India. Previously, I was one of the board members for OWASP. And when it comes to work, I work for a company named Sneak. That's a little bit about myself.
Cool. Very, very welcome. Happy to have you aboard.
Thank you.
If you have any questions, we've gone through a few administrativia, but we're going to hit the cool stuff now. So you got here in time. KoalaCon is our internal joking name for our webinar that we're going to run next week. I've been working with the events group in OWASP, and we've done a lot of marketing, and we now have almost 150 registrations. I think, oh, looking at the screen, we actually exactly 150 registrations as of this moment. As this is a free event, I think we'll probably get 100 participants, but that's really, really good. Thanks to Paul, we have been invited to use Sonotype Zoom accounts, so we can actually host 1,000 guests if needed. So please continue to spread information about this. It's really important that we get as many as possible of the vendors in this business, as well as customers, and hopefully some authority people in here. We made an agenda, and I still have to find and get in contact with Niklas about it. And I think we invented the title of Steve's talk because you weren't there. But if you want any changes, let me know. We have, I will start publishing this on Eventbrite, so we have the agenda. Okay, but it's in the KoalaCon document that you all have access to, I believe.
Okay, so I need to put together a deck for that talk then, right?
Yeah, or just
Oh,
run it
okay.
ad hoc. But
Yeah, no, I'm not
I
going to
wanted
wing
to
it.
give you a chance to introduce the whole thing, the world, right?
Okay, got it. All right.
But you have 10 minutes, so not a big slide deck.
Ah, okay, I see. 1705 to 15. Okay.
Yeah. And 15 to 35 I gave to myself because I think I'm a brilliant speaker and I needed that time. Anthony Harrison, who unfortunately is occupied exactly at this meet time every week, but he's been involved. We'll talk about the object model. He was part of creating that object model. He participated in that meeting. Niklas, I keep forgetting his last name, from Dependency Track, has agreed to talk about
Schuster.
Dependency Track.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'll chat with him. We're hanging out Victor as the commercial, ugly person that wants to earn money for a living. And the open source. Yeah, and the friendly open source community, positive, cheerful guy is Piotr. And then we have an open Q&A.
Okay, so the Q&A is going to last a half an hour then, right? Okay.
Yeah, and we'll probably, likely, one of us will run over time, but I'll try to stay on time. But we have some distance. I started working on the slides, and I'll be happy to go through them. I found, interestingly enough, I'll see if I can switch here, that CISA has this SBOM sharing working group. I don't know if anyone here has participated in that.
I'm aware of them, but I haven't. I'm kind of working on the parallel working group on the generation side, so there's some overlap, but not close collaboration. So I don't have a ton of insight.
I'll see.
I'm participating there, Ollie.
Sorry?
I'm participating there. It's sharing Tiger.
I thought you said that earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, and sharing. It's a Tiger team for sharing through Isaacs. So also the group is led by Phil and Chris Blask.
Okay.
Isaac and Chris Blask, and they developed some use cases, but it's not at the level of
No.
say well
But
defined.
they at least they produced a document which I found interesting for us, where they talk about a sophistication level, and I think it's kind of important for us that we are actually fitting very well into the what they call sophistication high.
This is a different working group, Ola.
Okay, this is a different working
This is
group
the
than
sharing
what-
primer from the previous
Okay, but at least I'm quoting that and
Yeah.
talk about the problem, supply chain, that you've seen a lot of this before, right? And then I go into use cases. I'm starting to write slides about the 2 steps I stole from Mr. Springett. Luckily, he won't see it. Some information about the insights. Talk about discovery, and based on our discussions, I changed now to using HTTPS records, which I think we're losing ability there, but we can discuss that later. So after this, Anthony will go in with the famous light bulb pictures and take over.
Okay, so we have a single slide deck. Is that what I'm understanding?
Not really. I copied those. I should remove them from here. I copied these to Anthony, and he's working on them separately.
Okay.
But I mean, it makes life easier during the Zoom meeting if we have one slide deck, or at least one person can manage the slides. So
Yeah. Okay.
if you prepare them in time and make sure I have them, I can organize that.
Got it. Yeah, I'll make sure. You're gonna present. Then you're gonna be the one sharing your screen, or
I can do that. Yes.
okay, because I noticed it was in Keynote. I don't know if everybody else has a Mac or not, but I mean I do. But
I can import those Seattle, that small company in Seattle that creates some other presentation software.
yeah, I can't remember the name of it.
Power Dot or something. Yeah.
The one that always breaks.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions, issues about QualaCon? I'll probably try to gather a few people to go through if you have worries about your presentation or so, but I'm pretty much available if you want to chat about it. From today's myriad and the raised activity we have on GitHub, which I love, I realized that we need kind of workshops, brainstorm meetings, discussion meetings to move faster. I don't know what to call them, but I would like to propose that. Now we have these meetings, which are a bit more structured and formal every second week, but maybe we could fill in the Wednesdays between, and those that want to participate or have something to discuss, we can dedicate that time for it. Because sometimes having the discussion on GitHub, and English is not the first language of all of us, it's easier if we just meet and say, oh, okay, we're on the same page and let's make a decision here and move on.
Does it make sense to do that ad hoc on Slack then, perhaps?
Yeah.
And just have like a huddle on Slack, if like a standing huddle, whatever. If so,
we can do that, but in at least my previous life, when I had consultancy projects, I'm between right now. I would like to have some slot reserved in the calendar for it. But I mean, if you have something that you want to discuss, we'll run it in Slack. If then those people have time,
Yeah, that's actually what we use for all of the, just FYI, that's actually what we use. We use Slack huddles for all of the CycloneDX maintainers calls, the core working group calls, the dependency track core team calls. We have it on the calendar, but what we're able to do with Slack is ensure that only people that have access to the channel can actually access that meeting. So it has some other benefits. In our particular case, it would just allow us to do some ad hoc type of things too, because not everything is going to be necessarily scheduled, especially if if two people are working on something, you just need to flush it out like right then and there.
Yeah, I mean, we have been doing that a couple of times.
Yeah.
I just wondered if we needed to schedule additional meetings because we ran out of time in these meetings. But let's try to work on Slack and take it ad hoc.
Yeah. Or can we make another day instead of Wednesday, or like
that's actually a good idea, so we can get people that are occupied on Wednesdays.
So it can be Wednesday, but then before 15 European time.
That makes life a bit complex for our guys on
Yeah, that's a problem because it's very early in the US.
Yeah. Okay, we'll see if we can find a weekly hole.
Yeah. Yeah, or it can be evening in Europe, so it's
yeah. But we can see what we can do. Steve disappeared just because I had a reminder for him here.
But concerning the Slack huddles, I think you'll be like successful if sometimes you might have a Slack huddle which only lasts about 15 minutes, but you have an actual outcome, and also sort of more frequent. And if it doesn't work without scheduling, then you can add scheduling on top.
Yeah. We'll see, but let's start trying this out and see if we can do things, because it's been really cool with the discussions. But I think some of the discussions we had today on GitHub could have been resolved fairly quickly if we.
I think.
But the problem is, I mean, many of us that have been active today are in European time zones, so that would work.
I think the only thing we need to remember is that there's a reason why we want to say we might have a conversation on Slack, but it's important that the pertinent points of that conversation are persisted somewhere on GitHub, right? Because we have to be transparent about things.
Thank you.
So we can come back to our decisions later to re-challenge them.
Yeah. I find that very, very important, and I'm trying to enforce that in other teams, that it's important, because at least for myself, I keep forgetting and having to detract, to go back to issues and merge requests and see, okay, that's why we discussed this. And of course, Piotr was wrong. He's always wrong, but we solved it anyhow, and we have it documented. Right, Piotr?
I missed.
Okay. I just said that Piotr is always wrong.
Yeah, I don't
least
understand
I can see
this
that.
wrong.
Okay.
No, yes.
Yeah.
No, Slack will be useful. So
yeah.
We don't
Benny,
waste time on stupid questions.
Yeah. Benny, who leads the Common Lifecycle enumeration, and I wrote an article that we are still waiting for publication.
Oh, you're waiting on me?
Yeah. I was going to ask, are we waiting for you or are we waiting for anyone else? You asked for photographs, and I think you got them.
Oh, okay. I need to do that then.
Okay.
Can you ping me again with the information? It probably got lost.
Yep.
Or is buried in DM
that
somewhere. Okay.
Yep. Okay. Other events groups. FOSDEM also some group is trying to mark this as the European Open Source Week. There's a website for that, because FOSDEM is 2 days, and there are a couple of fringe events, additional events the days before and day after for various communities. I know Jabber always had an event the days before. now Philip Omredam, who spearheads the package URL working group in ECMA and CycloneDX and Verse, have an event on the Friday. But there is an SBOM dev room that is largely historically organized by SPDX and have SPDX content. I think we should propose something from Koala there, and there are call for papers out. There's also, interesting enough, a security dev room that mentions supply chain security. So maybe we can get ourselves in there. I'm in conversation, but we haven't found a time to discuss with Simon Josefsson, who is managing that dev room, to make him at least aware of what we're doing. In addition, there's again this year on the Sunday, I believe SBOM dev room is on Sunday, and unfortunately the same day there's an regulatory landscape something dev room that covers CRA, PLD, and other issues. AI Act, I would presume, this year. That's been interesting.
Well, if the document doesn't say the date for FOSDEM.
Oh, everyone knows, Mark.
Exactly.
They're always first weekend of February. And FOSDEM is a free open source conference that's hosted in a university. We occupy almost all of the university. It's enormous. And the number of food trucks outside is also enormous. But it's a really good event for open source communities. Unfortunately, OWASP hasn't been there. And I think OWASP should be more active. But we tried at least. I pushed someone I know that's in the board of OWASP. Was it Spring?
Yeah, some guy. I don't know.
Yeah, some guy. But I'll discuss. I'm going to OWASP Benelux next week to have a talk about Koala and CRA and a training. So I'll talk with OWASP in Netherlands and Belgium and Luxembourg about this and see if we can fix something for 2026. We also have OWASP AppSec in Barcelona. I really think this is a cool conference. I learned a lot. I was very, very tired last year when I was in Lisbon. They have a call for trainings and call for talks out right now. Trainings are sessions where they charge people, so you can get some earning from it. Talks, you get a free ticket and probably a free lunch, but that's it. They have a really good committee that goes through all the call for papers, so all the proposals. So you have to be. You can't just throw in a napkin with a note saying I want to speak. You have to prepare a bit more. But I do recommend that we try to participate in this and be seen. Last week we also saw a new group being formed here in Europe to work on open source and the CRA, and this is confusing for a lot of us because Eclipse Foundation have formed something called the ORCVG, Open Regulatory Compliance Working Group, where OWASP and many others are members, the Python Foundation, the Apache Foundation, all of them, and some
all the
commercial
foundations
companies.
except for LF.
Except for LF and OpenSSF, right?
Well, OpenSSF is LF, so
Yeah,
it is.
yeah. And now they're starting a workshop of their own and doing some things. It is confusing. So we'll see what happens. The CRA got published today in the official journal of the European Union, and that means that on December 10th, it becomes a law, active law in all over the EU.
Nice
and then
date.
we have, and then we have
exactly
2 steps.
3 years from for show.
Oh, beautiful. Then there are two steps to take note of. One is 21 months after this date, December 10th, where people have to report exploits in their products. And 3 years after, they have to have CE marking, which means secure by design, secure by default, and many other things. So the clock is ticking, and now a lot of standard groups are working on what they call horizontal standards that will talk about more details. And one of the reasons we need to get this out and heard of is that I would like at least a few of these horizontal standards to point at CycloneDX and the T API as the preferred mechanism of exchanging artifacts, right? So there will be a lot of documents and work to be done during the 3 years. Any other events or things that happened that we need to discuss? No? When I see Dimitri, I remember that we had a note here. You talked earlier about a group in CISA, the Tiger team. Maybe that's the group we talked about recently.
Yeah, that's the group. That's the CISA Tiger team for Isaac SBOM sharing. And the way they want to roll it is that there will be Isaac. There's a lot of Isaac, like financial Isaac, health Isaac. There's electric Isaac now. They're naming themselves. There is water Isaac and others. Auto Isaac. And all these Isaacs, they're representing a lot of members from the specific market that they are targeting and helping to share information in regards to cybersecurity in that market segment. So like automotive Isaac, as example, Auto Isaac, they will share information about anything that's relevant for automotive manufacturers. And the idea there is that each Isaac will operate some type of repository that allows to share SBOMs between the group members, right? It's of course it's not mandatory to submit your SBOMs there, but if you want, you can give them SBOMs and they will kind of operate and share them. So we created a reference design with Health Isaac already. So my company did that. And they are using today for proof of concept in this space for health Isaac members. And overall, they want to be able to share this, right? And I told them that, sorry, there's the Koala project, and I think that we should seriously look into this. I'm planning to implement it definitely as part of our tooling. But I said that, anyone who comes in and want to get these SBOMs from this central location repository, they need to implement the same capabilities. So that was the idea there. And this group is meeting. It's not so convenient for Europe. They are meeting on Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern. So it's quite. Yeah.
10 o'clock my time. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to have the invite, I can forward it to you so you can come in and also kind of give them a little bit, highlights about what's been done here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also understand their objectives.
Yeah.
I think it would be really, really great.
Cool. Any other events, groups we need to be aware of? I participated in a SCIT community meeting this week and continued occupying discussions about T. And Steve Lasker indicated that he was interested in joining today, but who works a lot with SCIT. But obviously he couldn't make it.
Who was that?
Steve Lasker.
Oh, right. From Microsoft, right?
I don't think he's at Microsoft anymore.
Oh, he's not. Okay. All right.
Data Trails, I believe is.
Oh, okay, sure, all right.
Yeah, but they've been on a tour on IETF and having seminars and connected Skit with something called vCons to trace digital conversations. But we have been having a lot of discussions about how to handle signing and activity logs and so on. I also had meetings with something called SIGSUM.org, which creates a transparency log. I think I'm going to book time for an open brainstorm meeting where we can go through this together with Skit and some other people in the space, document signing space, and see if we can come up with some sort of architecture very close to SIGSTOR and see how that would look like. Yeah. Okay. Recent changes we've done then in our work. I could have missed something. I just wrote these notes a few minutes before the meeting. Paul indicated to me that the Amazon DNS UI didn't support the URI DNS records, and I thought, what the? And I realized that the RFC is an informational RFC, and I called one of the authors, Patrick, and he told me, yeah, the HTTP people didn't really understand this. And there's a long history of problems between the HTTP group in the IETF and the DNS people. For some reasons, it's hard to get them in the same room and agree on something, especially if you mention DNS over HTTP. There will be a lot of heat. So something happened there, but even though I think it's a brilliant solution, exactly what we would need, because the DNS query would actually get an HTTPS URI back, which means that we could have point to any starting point in a web URL path with that. We could also point to another provider's URL path, not our own domain.
I mean, to be fair, Ola, you could just do a TXT record for that.
I don't like creating new stuff by using the TXT option. It's not really meant for that. And my friends in the DNS world would hate me. I would rather than use the URI records and be done with it. But we looked, Paul and I have been looking into SVCB or HTTPS records. I don't know why they have two names, really, SVCB for other protocols and HTTPS for HTTPS. But that's the way they did it. But basically, we'll get failover and load balancing if we read the RFC. But we can't get, we're getting a new host name, but we're not getting a new URL as the output. And we have a pull request where I updated the documentation for that and updated my presentations. I'm adding some test zones to one of my DNS servers, so we'll see. But I found when I Googling, I didn't find a lot of people supporting the load balancing and failover. So I'm a bit afraid of libraries here, but I still think it would be a good thing to use, but it's an option. I know that my friend Daniel, who's the author of curl and expert on HTTP, unfortunately is on holiday, but I'll try to reach him when he comes back to work to see what he knows about this, if it's a way forward or if it's something that people just decided that is stupid and then we need to find something else. But I have, for those of you who don't know, I have a history in this world of SIP, IP telephony, and we use DNS heavily to do load balancing on the client side and failover on the client side. And I think that's brilliant. And we do that with SRV records. Now, we have a similar thing because the traditional telcos, they don't even use DNS, they use IP addresses because that's how they think. So they have no failover, no load balancing. Yeah, right now we're writing HTTPS records and we test that. I'm looking to this and I'm looking to the service provider situation. We had a discussion about CNAMEs earlier, Victor, because the clear thing is that if the user, in this case, the client, enters a URL to go to, that URL should match the service certificate. All these DNS resolutions is happening in the background, but it's still the URL that people or someone has started with that should match the certificate. That could end in with a service provider having to provide very large lists of server names, and that wouldn't work. So but if you have a 302 in the middle, you change target, and then you can have a certificate, right? That shows the service provider's name instead of where we started. But the DNS name in the TEI is the DNS name that we match in the certificate, not the host name in the DNS records. And that's very clearly stated in the RFC.
I wonder though, because if this works, right? I assume this takes off, then you're gonna have providers that will offer multi-tenancy, right?
Yeah, and we have to make that easy for them. So we have an unresolved ticket here that we need to go back to and find a solution to.
Yeah, that would be
No,
a
but what I
mandatory
mean is-
use case for ServiceNow.
Yeah, right. So but what I mean is the 301 path or 302 path kind of goes against that, because then you lose some context for the multi-tenancy deployment. Because if you do like a regular CNAME and just use this basic example of like a WordPress host, right? They can issue a search for you on your behalf, right? Because they control the CNAME. If you point it to them, they can issue a search for that.
Yeah, but that's something else, because then they have SNI, right?
Not always.
Yeah,
Not always.
or yeah, or they go on the old way, the host name header, so they can find a matching certificate, but then they have to have one certificate per customers. I'm trying to solve this. Yeah, can have the service provider have one certificate for all customers?
Yeah, but that's how they use with Let's Encrypt, right? Which is the way it's done today, right? And what I mean is, if you lose the host name, that makes it a lot more complicated to operate in a multi-tenancy environment. But if you do have the host name, it's easy to provide a multi-tenancy solution, because then you could easily provide the appropriate payload.
Then you're breaking so many RFCs. So, we can't do that, but we will have to find a solution that follows the RFCs here.
So this is a bit where I'm confused, right? And let's just take away the new shiny HTTPS and SVCB and URI DNS records. I don't think I'm that old that I call myself old school, but I'm going to stick with what I know, right? Which is that CNAME example, right? So ultimately, whether CNAMEs or just A or quad A records are used, you look up the domain name in the TEI, and you get back.
Think, Paul. Think if you take a web browser and you go to Edwina.net, there is a CNAME involved in that, but the web browser still checks for Edwina.net in the certificate, right?
Yeah, let me. So I don't think we're going to solve it on this call. I think we need to actually work through some of these examples about what it is we are expecting, and I worry we're overcomplicating it, right? And I worry this use of the modern DNS records isn't necessarily providing us. I'm struggling to see what additional value it's providing us over the A and the quad A with a .well known, for example. I'm struggling to see the additional value at this point. I'm not saying it's not there. I think it's a lack of understanding, perhaps.
If you
Right.
read my pull request, we're ending up in .well known regardless, in both cases. But the .well known in the old case is on the public web server if you don't get a TI. But if you get a TI, you can either resolve in DNS or you can skip that part and say that's stupid and look for A or quad A records and go
so
to
they
that
don't-
website in the old traditional way. And on that website, because we haven't got URI records, you have to look for .well known and then get a 302, like Piotr found in, which
Yeah.
RFC was that? I stole the text from an RFC you pointed to, Piotr.
I don't remember. It was
Yeah. But you have to get a 302, and that means you
WebDAV
can
or
get
something like this.
yeah, but the 302 means you can get to a service provider or you can get to another web server or the same web server, but just another URL path.
I don't remember. Why did we not use SRV records?
Because HTTP invented their own. They don't support SRV at all. Yeah.
Yeah, but
that's-
TEI can support them.
No, but we're still using HTTP. So regardless of what we think, I think we have to stick with, because we want to reuse libraries and so on and so forth. But I think most of the libraries doesn't support the failover. That's an additional feature, right? Or load balancing on client side. So most
a lot of
libraries
HTTPS libraries are going to rely on an underlying DNS resolution, which is going to provide a response.
Yeah, but the thing is, the underlying DNS resolution could actually be modern and read HTTPS records. But I would say that most of them today, you just look for A or quad A records, hopefully with happy eyeballs, and find a web server, and that's fine. We support that. The HTTPS record is an extra, but if you don't find them, then you move on to the traditional AAA. But I do want to have in our specs that there is a way, advanced and maybe not supported by our clients, to have load balancing and failover, right?
I think
Yeah.
I think we need to focus on providing the most value to the most people as quickly as possible in a backward compatible way. If this conversation of DNS and more the modern, the HTTPS one was only ratified 6 years ago, so its availability is not, every DNS server does not support it. If this conversation is going to take away from what this group is trying to do, then I would propose that we leave room for improvements in future versions of the spec. Keep in mind, we don't have to get it all right initially. What we need to do is provide a way for transparency to happen in a forward compatible type of way, right? Where we can improve it over time.
I think that goes back to the original mission statement, which was basically MVP. So totally makes sense to have something which will work, might not be perfect, can be improved.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, because we started out with the use of the URI record, the URI record does provide some very specific value that HTTPS records don't, or SVCB records don't, or SRV records don't. So I think, maybe that is a sensible decision, is to just, we had the idea, we couldn't quite get it to a consensus, and so the default is, regular DNS.
Yep. But that doesn't mean, since this is part of HTTPS standard, if someone wants to implement this, it's fine, but it's not a requirement in our spec.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. I'm happy with that. We have a few minutes left. I was hoping for more, but I did write in the Slack channel that this meeting was going to be 4 hours, right?
I've got a drop at the top of the hour.
Me too.
Likewise.
We have a new open API that is fairly similar to the old one from Pavel, but the Pavel one was extended to merge the publish. I wasn't very happy with that, but we played with that idea for a while. But I think the publish API is another beast we need to focus on. But the consumer facing API is more well defined at this point. Both Paul and Victor have been working a lot with this, and I think maybe we can have a huddle or something for those of you that haven't worked with OpenAPI. I mean, but we can both generate very interesting test interfaces, dynamic. I've been able to generate Python code and Go code from the OpenAPI spec. I think we can generate a test suite with this as well. So
Is
this
there a way
it's already part of the pipeline.
Yeah, so my understanding is that we've got it separated now. Is that correct? Into
It's
different
only
open-
the consumer side today.
No.
No.
Okay. Did you add?
That open API specs has both sides
Yeah.
Okay.
in one API.
Okay, so we
Yep.
single API spec covering
Yes.
that's actually good in my opinion, because we've got authentication and authorization and a bunch of other things, and that would be
But
just a ton of unnecessary replication.
Yes.
I think though that authorization on the publication side is a totally different beast than on the consumer
The
side.
way I've done it, I know we're running out of time.
I need to look in what you've done. I missed that. Sorry.
Yeah, TLDR is for all the read-only operations, authentication is optional, but for write operation is mandatory.
Okay.
Because there are scenarios where you do want to have it write a permission on read operation as well. So that's why I made it optional.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I need to look into this and see. Sorry, I totally missed that. But
and I updated the workflow diagram as well. So
was that a PR that you did, Victor? Or
yep.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
PR ladded this morning.
It's
Okay,
multiple
okay.
PR,
I haven't seen
multiple PRs now. All
Yeah.
merged apart from one where we're just trying to consolidate the internals, which shouldn't have any contractual effects in the spec. This is just making sure we reuse schema objects and that kind of stuff to make it more maintainable.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But the building
Okay.
blocks are there. Now we needed more eyeballs essentially and think through how the workflow would look like. So I have harmonized the docs for the workflows as well to align with the new API. So, but there are probably a bunch of more use cases we need to flash out in both use cases and API. But the plumbing is there. So Paul, thanks for the plumbing for your end. I just added and finished like the added endpoints and verbs, I guess. And now, so yeah. But it's a pretty beast of a PR, unfortunately. I got carried away.
Yeah, and we've got four issues we've kind of just left open for some discussion off the back of merging that PR, which are probably less about the scheme, the open API spec themselves, and more about terminology or parts of the specification. Ollie, if you want to relabel any of those, then please go ahead. I'll just label them what I thought was appropriate.
Yeah. I'll take time tomorrow and try to catch up and go through it. I'll look especially on the publication side, because I think publication will happen in many different ways. One of them is using the API. So in some cases, I think implementers will have their own publication interface. And not
that's fine, because they will still hit an API in the backend. That's just a different front end, no?
Yeah, but the thing is that if you generate with your open API spec, it will generate both could I disable the publication part?
So yeah, there is a. I backed it out of my first draft of the Open API spec. So there's the concept of tags, which we got product, leaf, collection,
Yeah.
kind of to group the operations together. You can in the spec label an operation with more than one tag or label, right? So I actually had
but
producer and
we have a
consumer.
requirement that an artifact can be published to 2 different leaves.
No, that's fine. All I'm saying is that it is possible in Open API spec to label an operation with more than one label. That's permitted. So you can say, and you can use those labels when you come to generate code to say only generate operations that are producer, only generate operations that are consumer. Yeah.
Okay. That's what. Thank you.
But the challenge is the Open API generator, certainly for Go, didn't respect operations.
That's a different problem.
Label. So that's not necessarily our problem, but we backed that out, and we need to go revisit that. But that's something we've done elsewhere.
But which generator are you using? Are you using the Open API generator or
Open API generator? Yeah.
Yeah, because I use that to generate Python code, but then I have to learn some template language to use to hook in my own code, and I haven't looked into that for a few years.
As Victor mentioned, the GitHub workflows are generating client libraries in Go, TypeScript, Java, I think, and another one.
And documentation in many different ways. Steve will soon write a
I'm gonna have to jump.
Yeah. I have another question, but yeah, let's carve out more time for this next meeting.
Absolutely, or in a meeting between.
I gotta jump too. All right, guys. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you for today.
Koala, let's put on the backlog for either next meeting or the meeting thereafter. Let's discuss the idea of having a plug fest at in Barcelona next year.
Yeah, I took that up with I don't remember her name in Florida. Leslie? No. In the event group
with
Lauren.
Lauren, right?
Yes. And I said that would be awesome to have, and that would also apply to other parts of CycloneDX, dependency track and others, to have some when people have integrated with it. Because she was looking for new ideas. So if you mention that to her as well, I think it will really be beneficial.
Okay. I'll bring that up in a future board meeting as well. Next board meeting, or is this week or next week? I can't remember. The next one is we've got a fairly full schedule, but I'll get it on the backlog.
I briefly discussed it with Philippe as well. So
yeah. Okay. All right. Very good. Cheers.
Vandana, anything you want to bring up or ask after the official meeting? No. Okay then. Thank you all, and see you all in 2 weeks.
Very good. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.